very happy to be with you guys here today. Kenny waved me into your last meetup of this type, which I believe was a wonderful presentation on the unification of design, narrative, and art. I very much enjoyed listening to that, and so as to return the favor, I have arranged a little presentation for y'all today, and I'm not sure how many people here are doing art stuff exclusively. I know that there's probably a lot of disciplines gathered here today, but I would assume that most of you are artistically inclined or are doing art in some capacity, like sculpting or drawing or painting or something like that. Would that be a correct assessment?
That is correct.
All right.
Yep.
Well then, my message here today should not be for naught, because Lord knows I've given this presentation to some people that are like not. It's like they don't have any use for what I'm saying, but like this is a topic that I hold very like near and dear to my heart, and I wouldn't just share with anyone. So away we go. We're going to do a little bit of audience participation at the beginning. But first, my name is Paul Richards. Um, some of you may know my work. However, this talk is not predicated on anyone here being familiar with what I do or much less liking it. What's more important today is kind of what the thinking behind kind of what I want to share with you. And so just blurt out if you think you know the name of this symbol.
Yin yang.
Yeah, there we go. So, does anybody know what yin yang means? Like what the breakdown of definitions?
Oh, it's like good energy and bad energy balance.
Yeah,
Masculine and feminine.
sure. The unity of opposites. There's all kinds of kind of dualistic breakdowns of this kind of bumper sticker image that we've seen a million times. But and I don't know who here is of Chinese ancestry or lingual capacity, but I would guess that far fewer people here might know this symbol. So, is there anyone here that reads these characters and knows what this means?
Lexi. I'm 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 looking at you.
Oh, you're like looking down. Sorry, this is. I know I can full screen this, but I need to be able to swap back and forth. So, spoiler: this is a term called, and I'm going to butcher the Mandarin, but it's kai he, which phonetically I kind of reduced to kai he, and you'll hear me refer to it as such in this presentation. And I kind of think of it as like the flow that we don't know. And just like yin yang, which is two things bound up into one, the Chinese painting principles carry a lot of these kind of dualistic meanings. And so, what kai means in this instance is something called like opening, and then he or he, which I'm going to just say, is like a closing. It is like a chaos and a union. It is well, we can just go right into examples of it from Chinese painting. Um, when you have a gigantic release, such as kind of like the stem of this rock shooting up, this would be a kai form, and it would terminate in kind of see this floral arrangement kind of brings things to a close. It's the he portion. Um, yeah, right. Like these are terms that came to me from a book that I'll share the link of, but it's all over the literature. I'm from the West, so it's like our art terms are very much like single word things, like unity, like balance, like rhythm, blah blah blah. And if you do even the slightest amount of research into Chinese philosophies, Taoism, that kind of stuff, or you practice like Tai Chi or whatever, you'll hear these kinds of concepts being bandied about. It's like two things bundled into one, like rising and falling. But I rather think that this tall tree and this cliff face forms like a fairly pronounced kai, and then this gathering, this closing, this kind of arrival point is this dwelling here. And note how much like information is kind of crowded in. In the West, it's like we call these things, well, it's the focal point. It's where all the information is kind of clustered and where the eye is forced to look. But we don't always talk about the kind of accompanying movement that it starts from, which is the kind of this portion. And here all these little shrimp seem to kind of be like kind of rallying down to the corner. So you could say that these shrimp here are kind of Kai shrimp, and that this coagulation, this terminus down here at this corner is like the he. The easiest example that I can think of would be a kind of meteoric streak in the sky, like a comet. You'll sometimes hear in art of things having a business end or a leading edge. I think of this as the kind of like the he point is the head of the comet, and the tail is like the Kai, right? And since we work with VFX, and some of us might have that as our profession, almost any VFX particle that we see kind of will demonstrate this kind of Kai quality. We have like the tail, the energy, the kind of gestural swoop, culminating in the kind of like the head, the origin and the destination, the departure and the arrival happening here in three-dimensional space. And you can see here on these other little drawings what happens when you remove that kind of directionality is you're left with just a static clump or object. It's the he with no Kai. And I don't have to go really far to find examples of Kaihi in my everyday existence. This was a picture taken in my wife's beautiful garden this summer, and we can see in naturally occurring forms the stalks of these poppies or whatever they are. It's the explosive Kai traveling at speed, culminating in the eruption, the termini, the beautiful bloom, the tremendous go followed by the tremendous stop. It's this is the main event at the end of this luxurious stalk, and it's I would argue in addition to the wonderful riot of colors is one of the things that makes looking at plant life so arresting, that our eye is able to go on this wonderful journey and take into this supreme conclusion. In a dumpier man-made sense, this is just a busted ass mailbox that I found on my walk route. And there's nothing particularly remarkable about it, but even we see it built into its functionality as kind of something that could be seen as kind of a Kai, kind of bringing it up to waist height, and all the business, all of its he is shoved to one side. This little flag portion here, which would indicate that there's mail to be taken, is busted off, but that would bring that mailbox to an even more supreme conclusion. This boat stranded in someone's yard, with the word gratitude written up at front. You can kind of see how a lot of the boat's major instruments and kind of like the part that cleaves through the water and all the railings and wonderful little things tend to be grouped to one side. So you could see the length of this boat as Kai and the head of it as he. You could see even in kind of arbitrary scenes. This is kind of a dumpy property also on my walk, where the way I've framed this contributes to kind of some accidental kaihi with this crow here kind of perched kind of right clustered at the end of this like kind of longer ride. Our eye goes to it because it's an organism, it's important, it carries a lot of visual weight in an image. But we could also see these trees kind of erupting up from the ground, much as in the garden, as kind of like evidence of Kai, and then a lot of information like he kind of clustered here, kind of along the horizon line at the property line. Um, Also incidental is this parking lot with its regular spaced kind of stalls and this kind of repetitious kind of plant, growth. But then at the end we have this like kind of weedier, warm hit, which makes me think of kind of a kai he kind of thing, not planned, but like there's all kinds of accidental stuff going on in life. Anyone who knows me knows I'm partial to taking pictures of bird shit because I like to see pictures inside of it. I think of the little shooting tendrils as it splats as kind of like explosive, kind of like Kai forms, and then the gooey epicenter being kind of like the he. Is everyone kind of sort of with me so far on this concept of Kai he being kind of release, gather, open, close? Are we all on the same page? Okay, cool. Because like I want to just this presentation is not going to just be me blathering at you guys for 2 hours. I hope to kind of whack through the rest of this presentation and then have kind of a more open dialogue chat with like a little Q&A thing. So if you'll pardon my just kind of hastily whipping through these slides, it's like I have a lot of examples from various kinds of art and some stuff from my own personal sketchbook where I kind of explore these concepts in full with the hope that at the end of this presentation, regardless of how much sense I've made or haven't made, that there might be something in here that is of use to you in your discipline that you can just kind of start putting into effect immediately. Um, I pull out examples from a lot of different places, but here I see the luxurious kind of lengthy body line with a multitude of kind of this would be like Kai, but within even like parts of this image, like if the face is the ultimate conclusion, if it's the he, then what of some of these other kind of stop off points that are that they seem kind of visually arresting like this book, but seem of a lesser quality. I think we can see Kaihi as being something that doesn't exist in an image as one occurrence, but happens on a macro and micro level all the way through. So it's like this hand hanging slack, travels there along this arm line. This could all be connected, and coming up here to like another juncture. So I don't want to create the impression that it's like prescriptive. It is kind of where you find it, and it's also something that I feel like is an experiential kind of ride that the artist goes on. We're not just cartographers mapping out territory in our work and creating these kind of purely sculptural things that are just kind of um, completely immobile. If we allow ourselves to go on the same trip through execution that the viewer's eye might go on, if we allow ourselves to enter into the spirit of this here, it's like I feel like everything here is like rushing horizontally, and then culminating here at this kind of vertical stop point. This is like the he portion of this little diagram, and then this is the kai, like the belt, the smoke, the hood, and then we have all these stoppages, this little incense burner, the waxy drip of whatever's coming out of this mask, and indeed this a secondary figure as an additional he point or punctuation point. Uh, I'd like to think that for the artist that created this, this kind of whippy voyage, this portion where the artist was able to travel at speed, perhaps happened quicker, and then the end point was perhaps slowed down on, and lavished upon, and given slightly more attention. That it was a slower cadence of creation, and that this may have been a quicker cadence. And even in some highly detailed works that aren't as kind of sketchy and dashy, you can still see how kind of like a lot of really cool attention grabbing art uh, carries these passages of, some people will call it, well, it's like rest in detail, and it's like, oh, it's 70% this and 30% that. But I want to invite you just to kind of like look at, what some of these things are doing, right? There's this large scale of kind of nothing with like some interstitial texture that doesn't really call too much attention, doesn't create little stoppages and like he points throughout. But look what we get at the end. When we go up the trunk towards this core, we're rewarded with things like this kind of jeweled heart medallion thing. We're rewarded with this this horn and the granular detail of the teeth and gills and eyes. It's such a payoff, and leading up to that is a lot of stuff that we can kind of sort of ignore. There's a lot of pattern going on that's very interesting for the eye, but like the cane, not much, not much, not much. He, kind of here's the kind of camouflage texture, 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 and then the payoff, the he point after all that wonderful, beautiful, luxurious kai. I selected this image as an example. I don't know if you can see kind of what's going on in even like the dragonfly kind of thing going on here, about how the like the wings and the I guess what would be the abdomen, kind of everything kind of rushes at speed, and then we're given the supreme conclusion of the head. We have things like like these plant growths and stems to halt and punctuate the end of this little you know pond or water element or whatever. There's just tons of stuff going on. So I don't mean to say that in order to attain Kaihia in images, it has to just be one instance of that. It can be fractal, and you'll find it kind of going on um, uh, at multiple levels within an image. I look at this image by Richard Corbin, and though it's again, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I feel like this passage travels at speed. I feel like this is the Kai expression of this composition, whereas things like this raven here at the top is the he. The chained lady is the he. This is based on an H.P. Lovecraft story. The tower traveling up at Kai, culminating at this crenellated top with this little capped thing, as he in environments we might see it as things like I know we have this big distracting kind of he point, this like graffiti at the bottom, but I'll invite you to look at the way this artist kind of like has clustered a lot of information at the top of this structure, and even how things as slight as this antenna have that kind of burst and then stop. It's like I've been blurting, kai he, if you say those words enough time, or yin yang, to a Western ear, it means nothing. I might as well be saying like bink bonk or like stop go. The words themselves don't matter. It's that phenomenon. It's like having both, having one as kind of like and acting as a precursor, a setup to the other. You could say setup punchline if you really wanted to. You could use whatever nomenclature fit your, I guess, drawing zen as you go. Because again, it's less about the result and more about like, as you're working, can you truck along a kai form like this, and can you arrive? Can you like draw that journey to its supreme conclusion? Can you create areas in your work that seem to kind of erupt as the stem of that flower and blossom like the bloom at the terminus? To me, it's just a fun thing to think about. It's a way of categorizing the components in a work where, as soon as you know that you're in one area or another, you know kind of what to do next. Like, well, I have a supreme conclusion here, but like then I have this thing here, which is also kind of a supreme conclusion. It's like they're all kind of fighting. Um, Whereas if you categorize something as like, oh, my image right now in this Artem Trakhanov thing, um, this is all, in my view, this is Kai. This is kind of like, this is the ramp, the lead up, and then this figure, who I think is from Dark Souls, is like, this is the supreme conclusion. It's we could get into compositional stuff like, oh, this is diagonal, and then we have the halt of the vertical, but that's yet another way of seeing it. I see even all these little abstract kind of like butterflies and kind of fine elements as taking part in that Kai portion, and it's all these things that allow this conclusion to be so crunchy and resonant. I love looking at the work of this artist because of the same kind of stuff. Because it's it, I think a lesser artist would have made this beak quite stunted and conventional. But the fact that we are given this long kind of trail leading up to the figure in both cases and leading back to the eye, and then like up near the eyes, there's this like explosion of plumage. Um, Again, not unlike the blossom. I see this kind of like white phosphorescent trail as kind of a beautiful path, a beautiful journey for the eye to go on. This is the comet tail. This is the he trail, the lead up. With a few little like blockers, like these little birds here are kind of like a he point, keeping us in the composition. So it's not like you have to kind of run everything off the page and be super like reductive with it, but like look at So, anytime we see like the gang's all here and it's like a big cluster of like Jeff Darrow esque craziness, and then at the end is like the little cherry on the cupcake, um, how how much more impactful is this guy, sitting here with a meal and a dog after we've seen this stuff here, all this like crazy, like you can stuff a lot of information into Kai in the same way that you can cram a lot of information into a camouflaged section of something. It's information, but it's kind of evenly distributed enough that it becomes noise, 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 signal. In painting, you can see who kind of like, I don't have too many examples of or even an indication of who this originally was, but like whenever I see kind of like these long kind of lead ups and gaps, it's like not only does that create the storytelling of like these people are going to meet and perhaps do battle, uh, but I do think of these things as kind of like, well, um, you've got this figure leading up to this figure. My eye wants to go here because like they've also roped kind of like this moon into the conclusion, into the he. There's all kinds of kind of racy, whippy things that I believe probably made it more fun for the artist to execute as well as for us to enjoy. In this example, the Kai would be this trail, and then our eyes kind of focus here on these two kind of frontal figures. That would be the he. If it was just one figure standing on its own, maybe that wouldn't be as arresting. But we've roped in a second with kind of these kind of like little granular kind of like hair trail offs, and again, it's like it's finer detail that helps that he be even more what it is. In comic books, you see examples of this stuff being done all the time. Do you need to show the entire L train whipping along before we reach the conclusion of this figure, and then this figure's gigantic planted, exaggerated hand? Probably not, but it does make it kind of a fun voyage to go on. It is kind of rewarding to describe uh, the whippy kind of bandana form, the ribbon form of this before arriving at this mast head. Uh, Hair and all these other kinds of kind of wild, watery, ethereal things seem to lend themselves very well to Kai expressions. This is Dirty Iron, a really cool artist you can find on Twitter that does awesome horror imagery. But like, look at how simple this is a Kai bridge made of skull and bones, with a lone figure at the end. This is the cap. This is the he. This is the terminus. So a pretty simple expression there. And I pull an example of something that I kind of sometimes I'll think of this kind of stuff, this accumulation, as iron filings. As a kid, we're all taught to kind of like, oh, here's a magnet, and dump a bunch of iron filings down, and we've all done that thing where we will drag the magnet and watch all these little iron filings kind of scrunch up and be led along by the movement of our magnet. And to me, that rather strikes me as a, like, if you are looking to create emphasis, like like tone, the thing people talk about, like, well, you pop your contrast with like your focal is wherever the most contrast is in the image. So you could say, yeah, I'm creating kind of a visual gradient with not as much leading to more, but like that max accumulation of marks kind of is like the max accumulation on the head of the comet. It's kind of like the bloom at the end of the flower, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, whatever. And these are things that I'll think about in my pointless kind of little sketchbooks as I'm drawing, because it's like it's fun for me, almost like a musician who just enjoys playing the guitar and wants to strum out some kind of harmonic chords. There's no rhyme or reason to a lot of this stuff that I put in my sketchbooks, but like I enjoy kind of taking someone on kind of a swift path and then having it culminate at something a little bit, I guess, that has more stopping power, or is more of that. It's like bang, you know. Here I didn't quite get it. These like two little lizards kind of create pretty good kai. They kind of flow along. This body kind of sleeves into that body, and there's a wonderful wiggly motion. But there was no he. There was no thing at the end of the rainbow. Were I to have introduced again something like those like little bugs, something for the thing to be looking at, or some other occurrence here to kind of cap it off, that would have given it that kind of like that kai he conclusion that seems so satisfying. And again, I'm not always getting it. Sometimes I'm relishing a lot of like kai kind of activities, and that's a thing I've actually noticed with myself is that well, maybe here this is kind of a conclusion. Faces seem to be one of those like little natural stopping points that we can't not focus on. But here with this guy kind of like looking down at this little worm that he's eyeballing, I see all of this as being part of the same kind of kai movement, the plants, this little guy. But then it's like this is the end point. This is he to me. And once I add that, I don't know, I feel a little bit better about myself. Like I know that it's kind of fallen out of favor to punctuate and capitalize sentences and put in all the little grammatical ticks and stuff, but to me it makes it feel complete. It makes it feel like I have brought things to that supreme conclusion. If you are the inverse of me and you find it easy to create, I guess, detail and attention points, but not have as much kai, a strategy that I could recommend would be like putting a magic carpet down when you're drawing, creating kind of like that artist I showed you that had the wonderful crow drawings. Kind of a luxurious path leading up, and that path can be linear. It can meander. It can stair step and go up. It can contain elevation. But what it does, apart from getting a little bit more air in the image and kind of introducing more space, more distance, more like near far. See, near far could be another little mantra if you really wanted to. You could plug that into your mental tool presets and use that as a basis for creating image. Oh, this image has good kai here. This image has good near far. This image has good up down. What I'm trying to do here is introduce a dualistic way of thinking that should, if effective, make the process of creating feel something like you can enter into more, and you can tick little boxes off and say like, ooh, do I have the yin to my yang? Hmm. Are these things different enough? Can I tell that this kai is really truly kai? Here's an example of kai that we all know from manga. It's the speed line, right? It's like it's accelerating the action. Here's these Dragon Ball characters coming together in a lateral movement, and it's the sound effects, the speed lines, whoosh. It's all kind of one direction. Here, this forearm slotted into it. Everything is kind of emphasizing that, thanks to these wonderful kind of parallel speed lines. The inverse of that would be this image of these people, this guy, this poor little dude getting drawn and quartered. So he's not having a good time because he's being pulled in many directions at once. Other elements of this image are kind of unified. We have this crowd or whatever, but like yeah, here the emphasis is on like many directions in one image, and I would purport that unless what we are trying to do is portray chaos, that it is not in our interest to have too many warring kaihi situations, and to kind of like practice what I'm calling here is directional economy. More examples, this one from Akira, it's like everything kind of rushing along these kind of like speed lines to this kind of conclusion. And in this example, it's like we have the myriad heads of this dragon all kind of corralling down into this figure here. It's just kind of like it's what you do if you want to lead things back, but it's like I think of this dragon as the kai component, and I think of these two figures as the he component. Here's a illustration by Bill Peet, who is a story artist for Disney and did children's book stuff after that. You can see this wonderful rallying of forces here in the horse, and these tree branches are rather like the anime manga speed lines. Kai forms, and then perhaps this tree here stopping us, in line with the head of the horse as another kind of visual stopper, like nothing, nothing, nothing information. I'd like to think that this was something that Pete did intentionally, but perhaps it was a little bit of discovery and a little bit of planning. You can see the inverse of something like this when you have, again, too many directions. It's like this creates the correct impression that this hero figure and his horse are kind of lost in a mire, and that they're just kind of like hopelessly, inescapably trapped here. So there is a time and a place for those like too many directions and like kind of warring situations where you've got stuff kind of flying off in every direction. But typically when we look at art, what we're admiring is that wonderful kind of rallying of forces, how contained and how locked everything is to, like here in this Ian McHugh drawing, the verticality of it, and then the here kind of like the countering horizontals or whatever. Uh, I don't know if I see like what I would consider a strong like he conclusion here. There's a lot of stuff going on without like the anchoring element. Um, that's fine for certain kinds of artworks where you're just trying to showcase kind of a thing. But it's like I I look at this Adrian Smith thing and I think like, well, we're definitely meant to be looking here, even though we have Kai forms and rallied forces kind of like these mushrooms that all seem to be trucking along at speed in this direction. Uh, to me, it's like uh, I've stopped seeing these kinds of things in artworks as decorative, and I've started seeing them as intentional. And not everybody here is like thinking, "Oh, this was my Kai He expression." This is something that I think that people just kind of intuitively grok when they understand how to kind of like create flow in pleasing ways. They're just trying to kind of knit one thing into another. This the man is rallied along the fur, and these little kind of like acanthus leaves are rallied along that, and then the supreme conclusion, the cat of nine tails, the braid leading up, and to this aloof, unavailable, I guess dominatrix or something. You could see this guy's face as he, you could see this as he. It's kind of bookmark, but nevertheless, we have that interstitial traveling thing where your eye can kind of move freely. Rustam Hasanov is a wonderful recent discovery of mine. Um, I've got work of his hanging on my wall, but he's done a bunch of wonderful kind of vision work for one of these more recent Ninja Turtle things. But like, look at how in the figure, how he's rallying things along kind of like common lines, like this foot slots into this arm, and this head kind of expresses that same kind of like horizontality, if that's a word. Um, Good figure artists seem to know how to do this. They seem to know how to combine, this arm and this arm together, the limbs moving as a unit rather as like separate entities. Um, when people talk of unity in general, they are talking about things working together. Another fun recent discovery was this artist that I've known only as Carolina, but here is an artist that is really kind of like leaning into that kind of almost like smear frame quality that you see in animation, where I definitely see this as like a stoppage. I see this as like like a he point at the bottom of an image, but like this kind of whippy voyage up here, that's like Kai as hell to me, and I feel that. I feel this arm rallied to this mouse, rallied to this clothespin, rallied to this lapel, rallied to this ear and face, and to me, it creates musicality within the image. Um, you can just draw a literal cat head or a literal, I guess, like snake person, and have none of that kind of play of kind of combined energy, but I mean, there is something to it. Like there is something to kind of taking this arm and incorporating it into the head, and having that kind of counter movement, winding up, having things kind of truck up and down the body line. In Tirada, everything is kind of like in this image, it's trucking in this direction. Um, I think this. It's also interesting to kind of note that here, he pops a little bit of orange on, and that creates a bigger like he point or stoppage. The image is all Kai in this direction, and then bam, we're meant to focus here, or in this case here. Was Tirada consciously trying to do that? He has spoken of following the flow in some of his documentary kind of interview kind of things. So there's something to it. This is a kind of a meme image that a lot of us might have seen, but to me it perfectly encapsulates kind of sort of like this kind of speed line smear frame uh, back and forth kind of like Kai thing. There's not as much he because it's in motion, but again, it's meant to represent chaos. So the fact that we don't arrive at a supreme conclusion in either of these, and that our eye bats up and down, uh, is essentially the artist taking us on that like chaotic, I don't know, terrifying voyage of a really pissed off cat. And here I think I've lumped in this image as an example of maybe perhaps a reason that we dislike spiders so much is that their legs kind of carry all these kind of unsettling directions. There's a lack of unity in a spider unless we're seeing it under glass, as a specimen, completely symmetrical. Um, when its legs kind of extend and go back, it kind of creates this kind of wiggly kind of anomalous. There's too much going on, right? Um, and that's unnerving for us. Uh, Pulling in examples from like just hasty examples from my sketchbooks or whatever, I'm trying to use the idea of moving body parts along its own body line, incorporating kind of like integrating the kai of this arm with the kai of this leg. It's just gesture with a different name, right? But like as soon as you enter into kind of like, oh, I'm making a big like creature or leviathan coming up and surprising these people, as soon as I realize that I want this to be a point of movement, I may start to kind of assign things to this kind of arc and draw them more along that Kai expression. And then once arriving at, these grouped figures, I may then slow down and kind of have a more halted expression. A snake, this is kind of like the kind of like ramp or lead up, culminating at the whatever, the charmer dude or whatever. And of course, here in this example, there's all kinds of other places in this image that I could have plotted these, I don't, encroaching zombies or whatever they are. But by placing them along this guy's body line, I get I get them to partake in a like Kai expression that maybe culminates at this kind of like explosion here at the end. This would be like my intended he. And I would say again, it's like you could have a knife in this alligator's hand jut out at any angle, but similar to that Rustan Hasanov Ninja Turtle stuff, it's kind of cool if you link an arm up with the body. It's kind of cool if you like join a head with an arm, because it's a little bit more like that wonderful action packed anime manga kind of expression that we all love in comics and cartoons. Um, in the same way that we can get kind of energy flowing outwardly or up and down, energy can also flow inwards. I think that's a thing that we kind of ignore when we're talking about Kai. It's not always a voyage upward or downward. Sometimes Kai can be a voyage in. The body can kind of curl into itself like a dry leaf, and crumple up, and that nexus point can be somewhere, at the center with many, many lines pulling inward. Um, my sketchbook examples are all harried as you see, but it's like I think you can see in each one how I'm trying to kind of like knit and unify things, just because to me it's more fun to do, and it also kind of like when I'm stumped, uh, it kind of provides it provides like useful data, right? Let's say like what do I do next? Okay, here I have this kind of scene of this guy meeting this guy, and it's like I guess here he's the more important guy because he's got the walking stick trope thing there, but it's not very eventful because these two figures are kind of analogous. But like, what if we put the he here? What if we put a more exaggerated punctuation at the end? You know, well, and what if we amp that up even more by like combining their sight lines? Or making one appear more aggressive. That this gets back to that kind of like issue that I was talking about how some of us trend Kai and some of us trend he, and some of us have images that are they get way too much Kai with not enough he. It's all of the go with none of the stop, or it's all of the setup with none of the punchline, and you really want both. And I included this other kind of example of pages where it's like if you tag in stuff from the animation world, like the squash stretch principle is kind of compatible with this because when a form kind of crumples up and collides with something, when part of a body squashes and you have the corresponding stretch side, well, the stretch side looks quite open and there's not a lot interstitially going on, and it's only when there's an event like a crash or a compression that you get all this information, which kind of functions as he, even though this is just like a stick of clay or something with no real nothing to really lock in on. um, I rather think that the inclusion of kind of repetitious rhythmic elements building up to something, these pumpkins here become Kai, and the mouse and its cheese becomes he. The mouse and the cheese by itself might have been interesting enough, but it's like that little ramp up uh, gives something to kind of be eased in and out of. I guess in sound design and in music, it would be kind of trying to build up to a crescendo. This kind of nude in the water, like having a buildup of water current, and then like the corresponding payoff as something that would make kind of a lift-off nothing sketch like this gives it just a little something extra. Again, it's the tail of the comet. And we see in real life all of these like shared destinations, whether that be rays of light cascading outward from a point, whether that be the maelstrom, the wind and the rain carrying everything along, whether that be gravity bringing everything down, and again, the growth forms coming up and down, the rise and fall, and the shared convergences of a correctly portrayed perspective scene. Uh, we do see things kind of like converging and arriving, and the arrival points and the departure points. If we take a little bit of time to think about what's what in an image, we become rather like Mickey and the Sorcerer's Apprentice, controlling the elements, which is a really cool thing to think of ourselves as in an age where kind of art is kind of getting subtly stripped of its magic. And I would hope that in the process of creating our works, in the experience of putting down what we're putting down, again, we're not merely depicting things and executing a spec. We're participating in a wonderful kind of like a movement of elements, and that we get to feel a little bit empowered in the way that Mickey is here. And that really is the end of kind of my presentation proper. I have additional slides and things that I could bring up to explain things further, but I kind of want to just kind of like let sit and see how you guys kind of like react to this. I guess I'll go ahead and turn this off and then cam up.